Welcome to today's webinar, Building for Better Onboarding, where we'll be diving into how you can implement onboarding strategies in a way that balances compliance requirements while also offering customers a great user experience. So firstly, thank you so much for joining us today. We have a great panel lined up, which I'd love to introduce you to. So I'm Charlotte, I'll be your host for today. And I'm joined by AJ from Union Bank and Sofya from Onfido. So AJ and Sofya, would you like to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do?
My name is AJ Atienza. I'm the Digital Channels Head from Union Bank of the Philippines. My group handles the retail and MSME digital platforms for Union Bank. Just a quick background for our company. Union Bank is a publicly listed universal bank considered to be the leading digitally transformed bank in the Philippines. We have always been among the pioneers in the banking innovation to deliver superior banking experiences to its customers. We are also consistently recognized as one of Asia's leading companies and ranks among the country's top universal banks in terms of profitability and efficiency. Through our Tech Up Filipinas aspiration, we aim to power the future of banking to best serve the growing needs of Filipinos, not just locally, but all over the world.
Hi, and I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Sofya. I'm a senior user researcher at Onfido, an Entrust company. And at Onfido, I help our product teams to build better products based on quality end user and customer insights.
Awesome. Thank you both. So to kick off, we'll break today's conversation into 3 sections. So firstly, Sofya is going to walk us through some data insights from some recent research we ran on Onfido. That'll include, what users expect, like, and dislike from onboarding. And then secondly, we'll talk about some of the practical onboarding strategies. For example, how to manage friction and alleviate user concerns. And then finally, we'll go into a quick fire Q&A round with our experts where they'll share some of their own onboarding tips. So to kick things off, over to you, Sofya.
Thanks, Charlotte. I'm really excited to start us off by sharing some insights from Onfido's latest end user survey. So we recently polled over 6,000 consumers across 6 markets globally to get a better understanding of their experiences with digital onboarding and identity verification when accessing services online. And there's really some interesting data here that I'm excited to share. So the first data point that I want to highlight is that 80% of our survey respondents reported accessing services online every single day. We're really reaching a point of digital saturation now, with online services becoming increasingly prevalent across all industries and access to these services rapidly increasing across geographies and demographics. This, of course, isn't a new trend. And the boosts that digital services got as a result of the pandemic a few years ago has only accelerated since. However, what's remarkable to me here is now we're seeing even older consumers, so this is people in the 55 plus age bracket, becoming accustomed to this new digital first reality and accessing services online on a regular basis. The variety of activities that are now being done mostly online has also expanded in recent years. So, for example, in financial services, we're now seeing this trend not just in online banking, but also with services like money transfers, trading, and investment activities. In this context, we are seeing that the vast majority of consumers now opt to set up new accounts online, whether via an app or a website. And industries like banking, investment trading, and gambling are leading the way when it comes to app usage. With this, we also expect the seamless user experience that consumers are now pretty much used to with these services to have sort of a knock-on effect in the coming years across the rest of the financial services space, with users expecting better online experiences in less digitally mature industries such as lending or insurance, for example. And I'm actually quite keen to get your perspective on this, AJ. How are you seeing your customers' expectations or demands for digital experiences changing in recent months and years, and what challenges has that thrown up for you at Union Bank?
Yep, thank you for the question, Sophia. And those insights that you shared actually align with what we're seeing locally in the Philippines. So based on my experience, having an app and a website is the baseline. Any institution that would like to deliver a great customer experience knows that they need to be where their customers are, and that means being online and being on their customer smartphones. No, but I guess from a segmentation point of view, and maybe like I could put it on our users on a scale. On one end, there are app-only users, and on the other end, there are online-only users. And then at the middle are those who use both. App-only users, like you mentioned, they are more interactive, they are more engaging, and they actually have embedded doing online banking in their daily lives. And mostly the use cases that they do are more of the quote unquote lighter transactions like fund transfers, those payments, check deposits, and of course, opening accounts. For those online only users, based on my observation, they tend to be more traditional. They tend to spend more time online since their use case is more on the data extraction or the financial planning from a banking perspective. No? There are also customers, sorry, these are also customers who have yet to trust their smartphones for financial transactions. So these are, I guess you would say, those on the early days of the internet, they're the ones who are very sketchy on providing their credit card numbers or doing online transactions. Now they're online. The next step that we need to do is convince them to trust their mobile phones and start downloading the app and do their banking on their mobile phone. No? Now, on your second question, the challenge that we always encounter and with this new customer expectations is bringing your banking experiences what you are used to doing in the brick and mortar on the app or online. No? And given the experiences that they see on Amazon, on Instagram, on Facebook, you see them that they expect real time, they expect on demand, 24/7 availability, transparency. And for us, it's an opportunity to not just digitize the existing process, but also to relook at how we deliver certain products and experiences to the customer. So it opens up a lot of conversations between legal, compliance. Now you put information and cybersecurity in the mix, and challenges product managers to look at existing policies and products and services, their relevance. And lastly, I guess it's also enables discussions with regulators because most of the time regulations are based on paper, based on the old practices of banking. Now that we have tools and technology, it helps us to show it to them, to showcase to them that this is better. Actually, these tools are better making banking more accessible to customers. No? So we saw that as a challenge and opportunity to innovate and really bring thoughtful banking experiences to our customers.
Yeah, thank you for these examples. I think some of the threads that you mentioned there, things like trust and balancing risk and compliance and user experience, well, we are getting to these as well in this webinar. So it's really great that you already brought them up this early. And actually, I wanted to also mention, so in terms of the experiences that require more considered decisions, something that you were mentioning that in relation to your more online users rather than app users, we've seen this in the survey data as well, actually, with our survey respondents talking to the fact that if a financial decision, for example, requires kind of a more involved decision-making process on their part, so it could be something higher stakes like a loan or a mortgage, then they are more likely to execute those experiences on the web or even in person still. So of course, we're not quite there with the full digital adoption, but we're seeing this move in this way as well in the data. Maybe to move on to the next piece of data that I wanted to share from the survey, we've seen in our responses that 1 in 5 users who responded to our survey reported abandoning account creation in the last year, most often because the process of account creation either took too long or because it was too confusing. In my own work at Onfido, I actually like to distinguish between 4 different types of user friction: interaction and cognitive friction, which are reflected here in these statistics, as well as environmental and emotional friction. And what I often see in user research sessions is that the different friction types tend to actually amplify their individual effects on the user, sort of layering on top of each other and resulting in an increasingly frustrating experience for the user. So, for example, if an onboarding experience is too confusing or has some unexpected elements to it, which is a manifestation of cognitive friction, it can take the user longer to complete it, which we would call interaction friction, but it can also make them trust the whole sign-up process less, or even trust the service less, which in itself is emotional friction. And this is how the different types of friction work together to increase the likelihood of user drop-off. Our survey data also shows that drop-off rates are higher for younger users, which can be explained by the higher expectations that digital natives often have when it comes to what they consider, the good quote-unquote user experience. But of course, over time, we can expect these high expectations will become the new norm and drive higher UX standards among businesses as well. A more concerning, perhaps, statistic that our survey highlighted is just how pervasive digital insecurity is to consumers' experiences with digital services. Well over 80% of our survey respondents reported being worried about being hacked or about their data being stolen and used to open an account in their name or otherwise misused by bad actors. And this data actually echoes another study on digital identity and online services access that I led at Onfido a couple of years back. And one of the key insights from that research was that many consumers simply feel out of control when it comes to their digital identity, digital data, which in turn impacts their behaviors, their attitudes and expectations when it comes to engaging in with businesses online. So, for example, if a user is hyper aware of the threats to their data, this can lead to higher levels of mistrust that they experience when it comes to accessing online services. And in this context, to me, it's not really surprising that nearly 40% of our survey respondents also think that businesses should and could be more proactive in protecting them from fraud. And then to round off some of these survey insights, the final takeaway from the survey that I want to share today is that most users reported trusting a digital service more if they had to go through identity verification to access that service. This finding is likely correlated with the fact that most survey respondents also associated identity verification with fraud prevention. But this association was also closely followed by speed. So meaning that consumers see IDV as facilitating faster access to services online. And I think it's this unique ability of document and selfie-based IDV in particular to strive this delicate balance between and speed is likely why it emerged as the preferred IDV methods among our survey respondents. While IDV is non-negotiable for regulated businesses, we've spoken already about financial services at length today. These findings, I think, also highlight the clear benefits that non-regulated businesses like hotels, car rentals, and other industries can also leverage by incorporating IDV into their existing onboarding flows.
Yeah, I think there's some really interesting insights there in that survey, and really interesting as well to see, AJ, how it's kind of mirroring in the real world as well from what we've seen and then what you're experiencing with your customers. So off the back of those insights, I'd like to just switch gears slightly. So we've seen how users feel about onboarding and what their concerns are and what they value, but then taking those findings and then thinking about how we practically actually put onboarding strategies into practice in a way that businesses can then meet those expectations. So we kind of touched on it already. You both sort of mentioned this, I guess, like triangular experience between the user experience, providing a great UX, making sure that there's speed and reducing friction, while balancing that with their concerns, for example, fraud, about their data being hacked and used online. And then finally, obviously, those very important KYC compliance checks, making sure that you're meeting the specific regulations and requirements in certain regions while onboarding customers. So it's that really delicate balance. And while user expectations that we've seen define what you should and shouldn't do, we then need to very much think about compliance as defining what you can and can't do. So, AJ, I think I'd love to get your insights here, because obviously, as a bank, how do you decide on that eternal question? How do you manage that compliance and risk angle with the potential friction that comes from a user experience? And then obviously, given your region and where you operate, are there any unique compliance challenges that you've had to navigate?
Great question, Charlotte. I think the keyword really there is balance between customer experience, because that's what we're in the business for, and compliance. Coming from the experience that we've gone through, it's not really. It's what's key is really governance. No? We have all these tools, we have all these partners that are enabling us to deliver great customer experience. They're giving us technology that we can use, like Sofya mentioned, ID verification, face verification, duplicate face checking, and so on. But the challenge for us is, there you have this kind of tools, but how are you managing it? How are you doing, making sure that it always works? Because by enabling, for example, onboarding on your app, you're actually opening it up to everyone, not just locally, but everyone in the world. No, that makes it convenient for your real customers, but it also makes it convenient for fraudsters coming in. So we need to make sure that you have identified what you need to monitor, like performance of your tools, making sure that your customer experience is still good, like being able to analyze the funnels where customers are dropping off, are you having any challenges for every step, and we really need to be deliberate on how we design the whole customer journey. For us, the strategy was, we need to, yes, the customer have downloaded our app and they're willing to give information, but to be fair, we need to be more of we need to create that trust so that they are able to open and be able to give more information, because this is account opening. Everything that you're going to provide us are personally identifiable information. So it's very, very personal and very, very private. So our design is, we don't want to have a very long page or form. We design it in such a way that it's a conversation. At first, we only ask a few questions, like key questions, mobile number or email. That helps us identify a way for us to contact the customers in case they drop off somewhere down the line. It also helps us to control the traffic, because with a mobile number, we can confirm that you have that access to that mobile number through an OTP. Then we look at tools to get more other information to complete the KYC portion of the customer, breaking it up with personal information, financial, employment, purpose of the accounts, and so on. So bits and pieces, we try to find tools how to make it easier for them, making them have less options or lesser friction in their minds on how to do or how to complete the next steps. So really, there's a lot of deliberate design questions and decisions that we had to do to ensure that everything is a smooth customer journey for our onboarding. And that's just the beginning part of the design. You need to, when you go live and you need to monitor it, you need to be more dynamic to assess if the initial design is working. If not, then we need to move quickly to ensure that we are able to adapt to what the customer is giving us, what the feedback is. No? Then, of course, behind the scenes, there will be a lot of controls, because again, this onboarding is practically the gate to the house. These controls are different kinds of controls. You have tools like ID verification, you have filters behind the scenes, you have whitelist, you have blacklist, you have a lot of types of controls, thresholds. There's a lot of things that enables onboarding. There's a lot of things that enables the magic of digital account opening possible. No? Then of course, lastly is, or second to the last would be critical from a personal or engagement standpoint. No? It needs to be clear that engagement internally is key for us to launch these types of products. Engagement with information security, cyber security, compliance, legal, and tech. Those for our teams internally, we work very, very closely to ensure that we are always informed. We're always informed of any threats, informed of any changing regulations, informed of any new technology, and of course, the better customer experience. We're always talking to each other. Externally, customer education is key. I mean, the challenge actually is how can we ensure that customers are well versed with the different types of fraud or security risks that are out there in the internet. No, what really, I mean, we do that social media posts, a lot of informational EDMs. But really, the real challenge is how to reach to those customers who are not actually online most of the time, because more often than not, they are the ones who become the targets or become the victims of fraud. No? So yeah, I mean, again, it's really being deliberate in the design, understanding your tools and the controls that you have, and engaging internally, your stakeholders, and engaging your customers through education.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something really interesting there, which ties back to one of the stats that we saw around, I think it was, yeah, roughly 40% of people think businesses could do more to protect them from fraud. But actually, you're talking about, obviously, a lot of the time it's at that customer facing level where they experience the fraud, and that education aspect is going to be so key for, yeah, helping both customers and businesses keep that fraud out from day one, because as we know, once it gets in at day one, it's a lot harder to then prevent it further down the customer journey in the funnel. So something else you mentioned also brings us quite nicely onto the topic of like scaling onboarding flows, because obviously you mentioned having all these different tools in your belt, lots of different kind of checks that you can use. We talk a lot about like step-up verification, for example. You know, if we see someone as a lower risk customer, they'd maybe go through like the minimum requirement amount of checks that they need to do, and then obviously for higher risk customers, we'd want to bring in more background checks, just to, you know, really assure that we have that level of risk tolerance in place. There's also obviously the many different compliance requirements that we talked about, and these can differ quite, you know, by geo, depending on where business is operating, etc. And especially if you're a large global business onboarding customers in multiple different geographies, that can become quite a headache to manage in terms of what checks are required for this region, how do we then implement step-up verification, etc. So as businesses expand to new markets and new verification methods, like how do they begin to manage these experiences by region? So for example, Sofya, I'd love to get your input here. Like how would you recommend businesses handle this expansion?
Yeah, for me, this is really where orchestration comes in. And it's actually a very similar mechanism compared to what you were talking earlier, managing different logic behind risk-based decision-making that you're doing on your customers or consumers in the back end. It's very similar for expanding to different markets. And really, I think for businesses, using a suitable orchestration engine can save a lot of headache with global or even regional expansion. So for one, as you're expanding your business to a new market, you do want to be able to quite easily add and manage new types of checks and decision logic and new types of verification that you maybe never had to use in your existing identity verification flows. So for example, if the new market you're expanding to requires you to run a new type of identity check that you haven't used before, the last thing you want is for that new requirement to become like a massive technical blocker to your expansion plans. And then in addition to kind of adding that new check and that new logic and managing that new logic, you as a business also want to be able to monitor and optimize each new identity verification flow you launch to a new audience, so that you know that you can make sure that everything's running as smoothly as possible and just as you want it to. And of course, optimizing then those flows to different consumer preferences in different geographies. And in fact, sort of learning about how much both of these issues were painful and challenging to our existing customer base really became the foundation of the insights that went into developing Onfido Studio a couple of years back now. Expansion is already such a huge and complex undertaking for a business. And with Studio, we really wanted to make sure that, you know, this process of adapting identity verification flows to new markets is just one less problem that our customers need to stress about and worry about as they grow internationally.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think moving into our final kind of point in this section, we have already touched on this, and AJ, you made an excellent point earlier about kind of capturing customers' information and email addresses at the front of that onboarding journey. But something we should talk about is the unhappy path. So in other words, what happens to those customers that don't make it through the sign-up process? And as we saw from the data, that can be like up to 1 in 5 of your customers. Obviously, there are measures that you can take to help reduce this figure. We've touched on those already, and ways that you can bring those customers back into the happy path. But Sofya, why don't we start with you here? Like, what steps do you recommend that businesses take to handle the unhappy path?
Yeah, it's such a challenge for so many businesses. I mean, the good news is that this is the minority of your customers. The bad news is that the moment when things go wrong is often the one that people remember the longest, as it can be basically the most emotionally charged interaction they ever have with your business, if it's really negative for them. One example of an unhappy path that I've seen that I can give use an example is a bank whose customers, if they were ever locked out of their accounts, had to go through 5 distinct steps to regain access. So they had to physically go to an ATM machine, withdraw a random amount of money, then deposit a random amount of money, get in touch with the bank by ringing the customer service, and quote the 2 separate amounts to become verified and get back into their accounts. Obviously, this process was terrible user experience on so many levels. It was hugely inconvenient. It put a lot of pressure and stress on the user, and it wasn't very secure. And sort of while that is an extreme example, it highlights the importance of really making sure that the unhappy path is as simple and as straightforward as the happy path, and not forgetting all those sometimes edge, but sometimes really not that edge cases of users not being able to go through this beautifully designed flow that you've created for them, to really minimize that frustration and anger that your customers can experience if something goes wrong.
Yeah, and AJ, I'm sure this is a topic that's pretty close to your heart, because I guess you're often face to face with those customer experiences. So from your perspective, like, was there ever maybe a not so great customer experience that Union Bank was able to get in front of and then improve? And how did you go about that?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually going to ask Sofya, is that really a real experience that you encounter, or a real bank that does this?
Our marketing team tells me it's real.
Oh my gosh, that is so bad. I mean, the frustration and all the steps makes it actually super secure. But yeah, I mean, thank you for that, Charlotte. I mean, I'm going to latch on to that experience because honestly, I would say 7 years ago, that would be the experience that you expect for local banks in the Philippines. If you want to go online, you need to go to the branch, fill up a form, nominate 3 types of user IDs, and then submit it and sign it. Of course, they verify the signature and so on. Sign it and wait for the email to understand which nominated user ID was chosen. And then it comes with a password that you need to change once you go download the app and go online. And that's the onboarding part. And again, if you lose your password or you forget about your password, that's going to be the same process. There's no ATM option. Just go to the branch. Queue along with other customers who are doing physical transactions. You're going to sign, click on select down, get a form, put all the information there, sign, wait for a few days. So I mean, when we designed our onboarding, that was one of the first pain point that we wanted to eliminate. Again, customer expectations right now is instant. You go to Amazon, you forgot your password, easy to recover your password. Same with Facebook, same with all the other big companies or tech companies that we use every day. So, and the goal was also to alleviate the branches from that very non-banking transaction. So we want to make it everything self-service. So I guess to answer that is to make it better. We made onboarding, we made recovery of your credentials self-service. We utilize tools, we utilize multi-factor authentication, we utilize face recognition, because this is a very like an everyday concern for customers. Like, do you remember your password right now? For sure, you're using your banking app. You've turned on Face ID, and for sure you forgot your user ID already, and you forgot your password. So automatic, you have to reset it. And I doubt it that you need to go to a branch, find a branch, and set up something in the ATM and then call the customer service. I don't think you'll be doing that. That's a waste of time.
Yeah. And I mean, we could also talk for hours about how your passwords are as well. Like from a hacking perspective and the amount of data that's available online, it just doesn't meet that bare minimum security standard that we need nowadays, obviously with everything being online. So cool. Let's move on then to our final section. So to wrap up today, we're gonna go into a quick fire round. So AJ and Sofya, I have 3 questions for you, and I'd love to get both of your thoughts on them. So firstly, what is one thing any business should do when figuring out how to balance that security and UX angle? So AJ, if we want to start with you first.
Sure. This is an everyday conversation that we have in the office now. Balancing security and UX, I guess, I mean, we need to put UX on top of this, but you need to always be concerning about what's the side effect from a security perspective. Be deliberate on your designs, know when to ask customers what kind of information, and all throughout the journey, try to nudge customers slowly. From a security standpoint, each and every screens that you introduce to customers, each and every field, make sure that you have thresholds, you have limits. Make sure the things that behind that they empower the APIs. There are controls that are monitoring it, and coming from our experiences, it's the back office part again. We used to start with purely digital. Then coming from all the learnings, we turned to hybrid, meaning there's still a manual or people reviewing applications. Now we're moving purely to digital because we already are maximizing all the tools that we have. And I guess that's mostly it. I mean, there's really no way to circumvent security, or I don't want to. I guess that's a wrong term. Circumvent. There's really necessary friction that we need to do. And it's not really for the bank, it's for the customers. No? And then one last point is you need to understand that onboarding is just one snapshot or one bit of the overall interaction of our customers, especially, for example, you have an online, you have an app. Security needs to be scattered all over the place and are working in coordination with each other, because yeah, you have onboarded a legitimate customer's ID is real, address is real, and everything, but he is a good customer after onboarding. What we don't know is what if that's actually a mule account, no, a mule customer. So we need to make sure that when they're doing transactions, when they're doing high risk activities, there's also some controls and thresholds and tools that are monitoring that aspect so that we are able to cover all the bases.
Yeah, and I love what you said there about, obviously, at the end of the day, a lot of this process is for the customer's protection, right? And I think it's really encouraging that we're starting to see in some of that data that, like, for example, users see things like identity verification, the biggest benefit coming from that it does protect them from fraud. So I think that links back to that educational piece as well, about customers are starting to understand that more, and about that some level of friction is there to help protect them, which is great. Sofya, I'd love to get your take on this as well.
Yeah, I love where AJ took this. We talk about positive and negative friction at Onfido all the time, and we do see in research in research insights this reflected as, you know, an intentionally designed friction really helps users to not make mistakes, feel safer, get through the processes that they need to get through in a much smoother way, reassure them that, you know, their data isn't being stolen. We've seen some of the data from the survey coming with that reflects the anxiety that users can feel. So it's really, it's not black and white when it comes to friction. It's just like optimizing for no friction is not the way forward. But to the question here, I'm gonna have to give you a very user research response. And to me, it really does come down to understanding your user's context. And I've really appreciated actually throughout the webinar today, AJ's responses really reflected like the empathy that he and his team have developed for their users. And I think this is really core to building exceptional user experiences. You can't build something great for your customers if you don't really understand not just their needs, but sort of the broader situation, you know, like where are they likely to be when they're signing up to your service? What frame of mind are they in? Kind of how are they thinking about this service that they're signing up to, what they might be concerned about? And all of these insights really help you understand how to best guide them through the experience, how to prepare them for the moments of intentional friction that I just mentioned, but also how to reassure them that their data is in safe hands. So it really, really comes down to me to that understanding of users at a deeper level.
Yeah, I love that, because we've all been in that situation, right, where we've gone through an onboarding process. We all have seen what great can look like and what not so great can look like. So yeah, I think really good point. So moving into the next question, I think I'd love to understand from you both, how do some of the onboarding initiatives that we've discussed today actually impact business growth? So Sofya, why don't we come to you first this time and hear your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to pick up on something that I spoke about today already, but getting the unhappy path right is really one of the UX hills that I'm willing to die on. Just year after year, our internal user research shows that if onboarding and identity verification goes smoothly, very few people give it a sort of a second thought, you know, but that is a good thing, because the alternative, that failed onboarding horror story, you know, sticking in your users or would-be users' memory for months or years to come, that alternative is much worse. And we have hundreds of horror stories of onboarding and identity verification that we've collected through hundreds of hours of interviews. It's really quite remarkable and scary. But we at Onfido, we do spend a lot of time sort of trying to prevent and alleviate those unhappy paths for our own products. And it's also something that we advise many of our customers on. And it's really about two things for me, right? So on the one side, the reputational impact of badly designed unhappy paths can be really significant for businesses of all sizes in all sorts of industries. But then also, if you look at markets where the cost of customer acquisition is particularly high, those unconverted customers can also add up very quickly from that side of the business. So yeah, it's really about fixing the unhappy paths as much as possible.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's actually not something we discussed in huge amounts of detail today, but yeah, that cost element that can come in as well, particularly if customers are experiencing difficulties, that can quite quickly add up depending on how businesses are managing that in the back end. So yeah, really good point. AJ, any thoughts on anything Sofya mentioned there or on the question that you'd like to add?
I think on top of the UX perspective, our digital onboarding itself was really one of the big key changers or critical change moments that helped us grow as a bank. We built this digital onboarding around 2019. We launched it during that time, and we never know that there's going to be a lockdown and a pandemic, no? So when that happened, that was actually the Union Bank was actually prepared. No, we were the only bank, the only local universal bank that has digital onboarding ready by the time everything was shut down. So we saw that was I would say, our hockey stick movement. And from then on, it was growth, massive growth for the bank. And it's not just for retail customers, but it also enabled us to expand our corporate side. You know, we have payroll products, and instead of those payroll customers going to the branches or sending out forms, now they can tell their employees, you just download the app, open your payroll account, and go through the process. So, and so that really contributed to the growth of our depositor base. Now, after we bought the city portfolio here in Manila, it is now also reflecting on the growth of our credit card business. There is thousands of credit card customers applying through our online forms. All of these, of course, leverage on digital identity verifications. And to be honest, the credit card is actually leading the way now over the depositor, the debit accounts, the traditional banking accounts, in terms of number of accounts being opened every month. No? It's a happy problem, so we're trying to find how to optimize our flows now, not just because we want to further improve the customer journey, the customer experience, but also from a cost perspective, because the more customers apply, the more costs we're incurring, because I mean, not 100% of those apply will become a customer, no? So we're trying to find that great balance between customer service, the customer experience, security, and now cost. No? Because when you're small, cost wasn't, I wouldn't say it wasn't a concern, but it's not as big when you're already at a certain scale. So I guess, but overall, I mean, we are super, super proud of what we've done, thanks to our partners as well. Because of what we've done and learned throughout the last 4 years, I'd say, or 3 years, onboarding was really a big part of our journey in terms of growth.
Yeah, and I love the way that you talk about it as being that journey. So obviously, like, you've obviously come so far since 2019 when you implemented it at such a key time, but that journey is never over, right? Like, we're always going to be, you know, customer expectations are going to change, processes will change, regulations will change. So yeah, it's kind of down to like people like yourselves, AJ, and the banks, and then also people like Onfido to just continue working on that and figuring out what the future looks like. So let's move on to our final question today then before we wrap up. So finally, I'm curious to hear from you, AJ, how you're working with identity verification partners to optimize those onboarding processes. So we touched on a few points there already, but if you just wanted to wrap up and offer your perspectives.
Sure, great question, Charlotte. I think it's a given that the technology needs to work as what was being sold to us during the pitch process. Now, that's really a given. After you get onboarded for us, that's where the critical moments happen. And what I mean by post-sales is really how between the customer or us as the customer and then Onfido as a partner, there needs to be a clear line of communication, because through this line you're able to set expectations. It's also through this line where we can set goals between each other and be able to recommend how to maximize you Onfido being able to recommend how to maximize the platform that we have available. Onfido being able to provide regular business reviews on performance, updates on technology, new services like the what was shown earlier, and new use cases from other industries and geographies. Because as like I mentioned, this onboarding is a journey. We want to learn also what other companies, other customers that are experiencing in terms of onboarding, preventing fraud, no? And it's not just banking. That's the beauty of it. We get to learn from other industries as well. And again, this open line of communication is critical for both parties to have openness, no? Because we also are wide ears to listen for feedback from Onfido, how to make our onboarding better, how to make the UX better, no? And we're also writing feedback, actually a lot of feedback to Onfido, how to better improve their, for example, scanning or ID verification. Because I guess I'm not sure if this is unique to our market, but our market has a very dynamic IDs, because even government agencies changes their design after a few months, after a few years, or after a change in regime. And then fraudsters also become dynamic. They utilize new tools. They easily copy new designs. So we need to be able to react quickly. And for us to be able to react quickly, we need a partner who wants to react quickly as well, no? And I guess the use of the term partner is, for me, I'm very, very selective on using it, no? There's delineation for me from a vendor versus a partner. And for me, I work deeply and I recommend deeply for those vendors who act like partners, because they want to see growth. They want their business also to grow. And that's where appreciation and I mean, I'm quite happy that Onfido has been doing that and becoming a very, very good partner through our journey. No, we've been Onfido since 2022, I believe. And I think there really was a ton of meetings of all the partners that we have. I mean, outside of onboarding, I guess Onfido is the most frequent that we meet. Like every month, every week, we have emails, how to make it better, what's the update, new technology, fraud scenarios, and people. And Onfido is very, very I guess open in providing inputs, sharing resources, sharing experts, bringing them here in Manila to teach our own teams on how to make things better, you know. And I very much appreciate in this for Onfido.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful to hear. And I think, yeah, I love the fact that you use that word partner there, because I think it so much is a two-way conversation, right? Like, you know, building better products comes from, as Sofya, you well know, understanding our customers and our customers' problems better. So yeah, for sure. I think finally then, just to round out, Sofya, is there anything from Onfido's perspective that you want to mention, like what steps we're taking to support our partners in their onboarding and UX journeys?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, can't agree more with AJ on, especially on the feedback from customers' points. From product team point of view, this is absolutely crucial to us in continually optimizing our products and services. But maybe to add a bit of a different perspective to this particular question that you posed here, Charlotte. So I think at Onfido, customer success managers are really always the first ones to come to our customers' aid when it comes to optimizing onboarding processes. And they do a huge amount of work, analyzing data on usage and different metrics that we track for our own moment in our customers' journeys, but also working with the customers really closely to understand what's happening before and after kind of the Onfido moment in the user experience. But then internally, we also have something called a UX services program, which was spun up, I think about 3 or 4 years ago now. And this program includes things like expert user flow reviews and tailored advice by our in-house product design experts. That's also a fantastic tool available to all customers who want to kind of work on improving their onboarding user experience and making it as seamless and as secure as possible for the users. So those are kind of the two levers that we also have internally to help our customers thrive in this area.
Awesome. I think that pretty much brings us up to time. So I'm just going to say thank you for sharing the insights to these questions and for everything else we talked through today. I think, yeah, and thank you for our audience for joining us. We hope that you found today's conversation helpful and that there have been some good insights in there for you. We'll be following up afterwards with the end user report, where included a lot of those stats that we mentioned throughout the webinar. And also we'll share a couple of resources from Union Bank, as well as the session recording, so you'll have all those available to you. And then finally, AJ and Sofya, thank you so much for joining and sharing your insights today. It's been a really great discussion and really interesting for me to listen and chat to you both about. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for the